Hey everyone, welcome back to another session. In today's class, we are going to deal with the respiratory system of Periplaneta americana. What is the meaning of respiration? Actually, we always get confused between breathing and respiration. What is it? Breathing, if I'll talk about, it is nothing but inhalation and exhalation of air. Then what is respiration? Respiration is nothing but while breathing, whatever oxygen you have taken, that oxygen is utilized to break down glucose in order to form energy. This we call it as respiration. Right? Now, respiration in cockroach is through the tracheal system. This was again the neat question, right? For us, respiration is through lungs, but when we'll talk about the cockroach, here the respiration is through the tracheal system. It carries air directly to the tissue. Now, in our body, if I'll talk about, if my kidney wants air, can we get direct air to kidney? No. What will happen? Oxygen will enter into lungs and all those processes will happen, and through capillaries, air is going to diffuse inside the kidney. But here we have open type of circulatory system. We do not have any developed blood circulatory system, right? Blood vessels are not developed. So what will happen? Directly your tissues are in contact with the cells who are going to provide oxygen. What are these cells? We'll study in today's class. Respiratory pigment is absent in respiratory pigment is absent in its blood. Right, so blood is colorless and it cannot carry oxygen. When we talk about ourselves, in our body, blood is having hemoglobin, which is called as the respiratory pigment, and that is going to carry the blood. Correct? Now here, as I told you, the respiratory system will occur through the tracheal system. Now, tracheal system, if we'll talk about, it consists of three components. What are the three components? One is stigmata, trachea, tracheoles. Let's read about it one by one. Stigmata, which is also called as spiracle. It is used to communicate with the exterior environment. So, suppose if this is the cockroach, on the lateral side, that is on the pleura, some small opening will be present. These small openings we call it as spiracles. These small openings, what do we call it as? Spiracles. They are in contact with the exterior environment. So this is your exterior environment. This is my cockroach, right? How many spiracles do we have? We have total 10 pairs of spiracles. See, one will be at one side, other will be at one side. So 10 pairs are present. 2 are present in the thoracic region and 8 are present in the abdomen region. But wait, we have how many thoracic region? We have 3 thoracic region and we have 10 abdomen region. So where it is not present, write in the comment box. Where your spiracles are not present, it is not present in the prothorax. Then which thorax it will be present? It is present in the meso as well as the metathorax. Which all abdomen it is not present? It is not present in the 9th and 10th abdomen. Where is the location? Just now I told you pleura. Do you remember? Pleura is nothing but the scleroid of the lateral side. Okay. Lateral side ke scleroid ko what do we call it as? Pleura. Now two terms are given in your textbook. One is polynoustic and the second one is holonoustic. Poly means many. So if you have more than 3 pair of what? Spiracles. If you have more than 3 pairs of spiracles, we call it as polynoustic. Same way, holo means whole, W-H-O-L-E. When all the spiracles are functional, if you have more than 3, we call it as polynoustic. If all the spiracles are functional, we call it as holonoustic. Right? Now, spiracle की अगर बात करें तो it is having valve. Let me just show you the pictures. Now see here, picture से ज़्यादा अच्छे से समझ आता है. Okay, so this opening which you can see, this is nothing but your spiracle. Spiracle is covered by or surrounded by peritome. Spiracle is surrounded by peritome. So the surrounding of spiracle we call it as peritome. Now if you will see, you can see here some hair-like structures are present. These hair-like structure, what do we call it as? trichome. This we call it as trichome, which helps to filter the dust particle. Then you can see valve present over here, which will allow the movement only in one direction, right? So this leads to atrium. This leads to atrium. Now this atrium is not similar to the atrium which you have studied in your 10th standard for our heart. Okay. Now, so what will happen? From spiracle, this leads to the atrium. Atrium, so what is present? Trachea is present. From trachea, what is coming out? Tracheal cells. Tracheal cells. Okay, tracheal cells. Right? So that's what is written over here. The valves are present in the spiracle. आपने अभी देखा होगा. Valves are present on this spiracle, which is surrounded by the spiracle is surrounded by peritoneum, which is nothing but the chitinous ring. It is made up of the chitin. Then trichome is a small hair-like structure which filters the dust particle. Each spiracles open into the atrium, which is nothing but the small chamber. The opening and closing of the spiracle is nothing but it is influenced by the carbon dioxide tension. Write it in your book. Tension here is nothing but your partial pressure, and oxygen tension here, that is nothing but the partial pressure of oxygen. What is the meaning of partial pressure? See, whenever you are breathing in, you are taking mixture of gases. So if I want to talk only about the oxygen, I'll say the pressure which is present in the mixture of the gases. Okay, so the pressure of oxygen which is present in the mixture of the gases, we call it as partial pressure of oxygen. Then what is carbon dioxide partial pressure? That is the pressure of carbon dioxide among all the mixture of gases. If we'll talk about the carbon dioxide, mind it will always talk about the hemolymph. Okay, why, how? I'll explain you now. Wow, rhyme ho gaya. Okay, anyways, one more thing which I want to show you over here. See, this is the spiracle, then leads to the atrium, then leads to the trachea. From trachea, tracheal cells are present. These tracheal cells, if you see here the yellow color, they are directly in contact with the tissue. Okay? Now, these tracheal cells में क्या present होता है? This blue color thing which you can see here, the fluid is present over here, जिसको हम क्या बोलते हैं? Tracheal fluid बोलते हैं. जिसको हम क्या बोलते हैं? Tracheal fluid बोलते हैं. Okay, now let's talk about the trachea. Trachea is made up of 3 layers. The outer layer is made up of basement membrane. Basement membrane है तो उसके ऊपर क्या present होगा? I have already told you that is nothing but the epithelial tissue will be present, right? So epithelial cells will be present. Which one? Simple one. When I say simple means it is made up of single cell. Okay, no double cell. It is made up of single cell. The innermost lining we call it as intima. The innermost lining of the trachea we call it as intima. Intima is nothing but it is the cuticular layer. That means it is made up of the chitin. Now this intima is responsible for the secretion of spiral thickening. Now if we'll talk about our trachea, does our trachea collapse? No, it does not. Why? Because we have C-shaped cartilage. So same way here also, if this trachea is going to get collapsed, so the air won't be able to pass inside. So what I have to do? I should maintain the shape of the trachea. How it is maintained? By the tinidae. Okay, some spiral membrane will be present. Spiral membrane will be present. Spiral thickening will be present. That thickening we call it as tinidae, which is secreted by the intima. What is the function of it? It keeps the trachea always open and prevents it from the collapsing. Okay. Now, अगर हम trachea की बात करें, तो here we are going to talk about the two spiracles. The spiracles which are present in the thoracic and spiracles which are present in the abdominal region. Okay. One by one बात करते हैं. Let's see the thoracic spiracle. So this is your thoracic spiracle which leads into valve present होगा यहाँ पे, which leads into the atrium. That's what we have studied. Spiracles कितना गंदा बनाया, रुको एक मिनट. Spiracles lead into the atrium. ठीक है. Atrium से what it has to go? It has to form the trachea. Now अगर हम thoracic spiracle की बात करें तो यहाँ पे trachea तो बनता है, but how many tracheas? Several horizontal tracheas will be formed. These tracheas will join together to form 3 trunk. Trunk is more more thicker than the trachea. Okay, trunk मतलब ज़्यादा मोटा रहेगा. What all 3 trunks are present? One one is towards the dorsal side. So dorsal cephalic trunk, cephalic word we use for the head. Very good. Then second one is your ventral cephalic trunk, and third one is the lateral longitudinal trunk. When we'll talk about the cephalic, it means it is going to be connected with all the organ of the head. समझ आया? Spiracles, spiracles से atrium, atrium से trachea, but here not one trachea. We can see several horizontal trachea. These trachea leads to join and leads to form three trunk. What are these three trunk? Dorsal cephalic trunk, ventral cephalic trunk, and lateral longitudinal trunk. Okay, now let's jump on the abdominal one. Let's jump on the abdominal one. Abdominal one में कैसा है? Again same है. Spiracle will be there. Spiracle के बाद what is present? This one is for the thoracic. Okay, this one is for the abdominal. Atria is present. Now here, instead of several horizontal trachea, you have only three tracheal tube present over here. Only three tracheal tubes are present over here. These three tracheal tube, all these things, see here, let me draw 1, 2 and 3. These three are going to open into three separate longitudinal tracheal trunk. All of them 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's on both the sides 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1. Let me, one second. Let me erase this. Let me, see here. First, second, third. These are your three tracheas. These are your three tracheas. All three tracheas are connected on either side. Both the side it is connected with the three trunk. Okay. Both the side it is connected with the three longitudinal tracheal trunk. What are these three longitudinal trunk? It is going to be the lateral longitudinal trunk, dorsal longitudinal trunk, and the ventral longitudinal trunk. Same over here. Lateral, dorsal, ventral. Lateral, dorsal, ventral. Okay. Now all these three are going to attach to the other organs. Okay, all these three are directly attached to the other organs. Right? Now, out of these three, lateral longitudinal trunk is the longest one. This is the eamcet question. Okay, lateral longitudinal trunk is the longest one. Now, all these three which are connected, यहाँ पे longitudinal, dorsal and ventral है ना, all these three are going to be connected. All these three pairs of these three and these three, all these three pairs of trachea are going to connected with the commissural trachea. All these three are connected with the commissural trachea, and each tracheal branch, at the end of the tracheal branch you will have the tracheal cell. Okay, at the end of the tracheal branch you will be having the tracheal cell. Just see this diagram. So we spoke about the thoracic spiracle, in which we spoke about the dorsal and the ventral cephalic trunk. We also spoke about the lateral longitudinal trunk, which is present in the thoracic region as well as in the abdominal region. This is the longest one. This is the longest one. Now see here, the three abdominal spiracle, 1, 2 and 3. Three abdominal spiracles are present, and then you have the dorsal longitudinal one. This one we have the longitudinal one. Then another one we have over here, that is nothing but the dorsal one. And the last one we have over here, that is nothing but the ventral one. Okay, all these three are going to be connected at this point. This we call it as commissural trachea. This we call it as commissural trachea. Here I have written it in a tabular format. Either you can copy this or you can copy this flow chart. Okay, both are same. Now, the last one is nothing but your tracheal. क्या बताया था मैंने? Spiracle, spiracle से atrium, atrium से trachea, trachea से your tracheal will be there. Okay, tracheal is the last one and it is connected with the tissue. That's what we have studied, right? So, terminal cell of the trachea, we call it as tracheoblast or tracheal cell. Each tracheal cell has the several intercellular tubular extension. So, intra means what? Within. What? Cell. So, suppose if this is, I'm drawing one tracheal cell, okay, so you will be having several intracellular extension like this, okay. So, this is your one tracheal cell. This is your one tracheal cell. Let me show you if I can anywhere. See here. So this is nothing but your one tracheal cell. This is nothing but your one tracheal cell, and this green color one which you can see, it is nothing but the intracellular extension which is present in the cell. Intracellular extension, which we also call it as tracheal, which we also call it as tracheal, okay, which we also call it as tracheal. Now these tracheal, see, trachea may we study the innermost is the intima which is going to form the tinidae, but tracheal may there is no inner lining of intima. So since there is no inner lining of intima, there is no presence of tinidae. It is formed by the protein, we call it as trachein. Now one more important thing which is present in the tracheal, it is nothing but the fluid. It is nothing but the fluid. Now see here carefully. Let me just go back again here. Okay, one second. Okay, now see here, air is going to enter through spiracle, through atrium, through trachea. Air is going to enter into the tracheal cell. Okay, tracheal cell में किसमें? It is going to enter into the tracheal. This each one is nothing but your tracheal. Each one is nothing but this whole is tracheal cell, and this each one we call it as tracheal. So where air is entering? Air is entering into the tracheal. And what is present in the tracheal? You can see the fluid is present in the tracheal. This fluid we call it as tracheal fluid. This fluid we call it as tracheal fluid. Now listen to me very carefully. The air is going to enter over here. The air is going to diffuse. Suppose let me talk about the oxygen. So oxygen is going to diffuse in this fluid, and whenever tissue requires oxygen, whenever tissue requires energy, it requires oxygen, this fluid is going to enter inside the tissue. Why? Because in the fluid what is present? Oxygen is present, right? So now you only tell me, suppose this is A and this is B. Actually it is one cell, but let me just draw it like this. Okay, and here you have tissue. Here you have tissue. Okay, now tell me, A tissue is active or B tissue is active? Which one is active? Of course, B1 is active. How can I say B1 is active? Because I can see less fluid over here. So what about the fluid which was present over here? Oxygen was dissolved in the fluid. Now that oxygen dissolved fluid is being absorbed by the tissue, because this tissue is active and the fluid is being absorbed. What about the fluid number A? Sorry, what about the tissue number A? It is inactive. Why? How can I say that? Because I can see more amount of tissue fluid present over here. So that means this tissue does not require oxygen. Why it does not require oxygen? Because it is inactive. Did you understand now? So when my cockroach is active, what will happen? Less amount of fluid is present. Where? In the tracheal. In the tracheal. When my cockroach is inactive, more amount of fluid is present in the tracheal. Why? Because it does not require oxygen. So fluid is present over there. That's it. Now, ये तो बता दिया मैंने कि these tracheal are going to be in contact with the tissue or the cell. Contact with the what part of the cell? These are going to be in contact with the mitochondria. These are going to be in contact with the mitochondria, so that directly oxygen is absorbed and it is being used for the making of the energy. Mitochondria is also called as powerhouse of the cell, right? Now, if I want to distinguish between trachea and tracheal, so trachea will arise from the atria, tracheal will arise from the tracheal cell. See, this is the whole is tracheal cell, and then you have tracheal over here. ठीक है, ये जो लाइनें आपको दिख रही हैं, that is nothing but your tracheal. It ends in the tracheal cell. It ends in the cell. कौन सा cell? The cell which requires the energy. Intima is present in the trachea, absent. Tinidia is present in the trachea, absent in the tracheal. Tracheal fluid is absent, very important in the trachea, but it is present in the tracheal. Right? Now the last part of this respiratory system is nothing but the mechanism of the respiration. So the way we go with the inspiration and expiration, same way here also inspiration and expiration will takes place. Now, before moving ahead with the mechanism, you know that inspiration is what? Inspiration is nothing but the air taking in of air. What is expiration? Expelling out or taking out of air. Okay, expelling or taking out of air. Now here we are bothered about the spiracles. We know that spiracles say atrium, atrium say trachea, trachea say tracheal, and then your cell will get it, right? That's what we have studied. So we are bothered about the spiracles. Which spiracles? Thoracic spiracles and the abdominal spiracles. muscles. And we are also bothered about the two muscle over here, that is nothing but the dorsoventral muscle and the ventral longitudinal. See, this is the dorsal side of the cockroach and this is the ventral side of the cockroach. So two muscles which are going to connect the dorsoventral side, we call it, sorry, the muscle which is going to connect the dorsoventral side, we call it as dorsoventral muscle. The muscle, the pink color one which you can see, the muscle which is present longitudinally, we call it as ventral longitudinal muscle. Right now, अगर हम सांस लेते हैं, so first we are bothered about the nose. So हम भी अभी किसकी बात करेंगे? thoracic की. Thoracic one is at the top ना, so imagine it like a nose. Okay, so if for inspiration what will happen? Thoracic spiracle will be open. अगर ये open है तो abdomen क्या होगा? Close होगा. Inspiration का opposite expiration होगा. So thoracic spiracle if it is open, obviously expiration में close होगा and abdomen में open होगा. Now inspiration in us is the active process, that means contraction will take place. But when we talk about the cockroach, it is the relaxation. Both the muscles are going to relax. When the muscles are relaxing, do we need any energy? No, we do not need any energy. So the process in which no energy is utilized, we call it as passive process. Now उल्टा इसका एक्सपिरेशन में होगा, both the muscles are going to contract. Since it is contracting, energy is required. Since energy is required, this process we call it as active process, right? Now, here see, mechanism of respiration mein, here we are going to talk about the inspiration and expiration. Just now I told you the thoracic spiracles are going to be open over here and abdomen will be closed, and we are going to bother about that two muscles. Okay, one muscle is your dorsoventral muscle. Let me draw it over here. So this one is your dorsoventral muscle. Okay, this dorsoventral muscle. When this dorsoventral muscle relaxes, your tergal plate will elevate. Your tergal plate, let me write it. Your tergal plate will elevate. Your tergal plate will elevate. Now elevation मतलब क्या हो रहा है? ऊपर की तरफ होगा. Okay, it is going to elevate. So since it is elevating, what will happen? Volume is increasing. But in which direction? The muscle is dorsoventral. So volume is also increasing. This is dorsal, this is ventral. So volume is also increasing dorsoventrally. Now according to the Boyle's law, your pressure is inversely proportional to volume. So if volume increases, pressure will decrease, right? Now let's learn about the another muscle, that is nothing but the ventral one. Ventral longitudinal muscle. Now this muscle also contracts. So when it contracts, what will happen? Volume increases. But in which direction? In a longitudinal direction. In a longitudinal direction. Again here volume is increasing. So when the volume increases, pressure decreases. So inside if the pressure is less, outside atmospheric pressure is more, what will happen? Pressure from outside, it will enter into the inside, right? So air enters in and this is the passive process because your muscle relaxes. Then what about the expiration? Expiration में क्या होता है? Dorsoventral muscle contracts. When it contracts, what will happen? Your tergal plates will depress. Okay, अच्छा, I forgot to tell you about the telescopic segment. Telescopic segment is nothing but, see here, one segment, other segment, another segment. So the segments are overlapping each other. Segments are overlapping each other. When the segments overlap each other and are pulled together, we call it as telescopic segment. So यहाँ पे telescope segment will come into the normal position. Why? Because the volume is increasing na. So what will happen? These all will come into its normal position. But in expiration, these telescopic segments, again they are going to pulled back. Again they are going to pulled back, due to which what will happen? Volume will be decrease. Volume will be decrease. Okay, कैसे decrease हो रहा है? Longitudinally decrease हो रहा है. Okay, longitudinally decrease हो रहा है. And this dorsoventral muscle contracts, so your volume decreases. कैसा? Dorsoventrally your volume will be decreases and your tergal plate will depress. Okay, your tergal plate will depress. That means lower हो जाएगा, नीचे हो जाएगा. ठीक? Now here, as the volume decreases, what will happen to the pressure? Pressure increases. So if you have more pressure in and atmospheric pressure is less, so what will happen? Air will move from inside to outside. That process we call it as active process. Okay, this we call it as active process. Here in this table you can see same thing I have written over here. Either of them you can copy. Right. Now the last part is the exchange of gases, how it takes place. When we talk about the oxygen, simple class, spiracle है, spiracle से oxygen enter into atrium, atrium से trachea, trachea से tracheal cell, and tracheal cell से directly get into the tissue or the cell. Right. So due to high partial pressure of oxygen, see when you are inhaling, so more amount of oxygen is entering into your body, so you have high partial pressure among all the other gases. Okay, pressure of the oxygen will be more among all the other gases. So मैंने क्या बोला, high partial pressure. Since high partial pressure of the oxygen is present, it diffuses faster in the cell and the tissue. But जब हम कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड की बात करें तो it has more solubility. Oxygen has less solubility. It has less solubility. Okay. Now कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड की बात करें तो it has more solubility. So due to greater solubility, it is going to mix with the hemolymph. It is going to diffuse in the hemolymph, and these hemolymph goes to the intersegmental membrane. If you remember, I told you one scleroid is connected with another scleroid with a membrane. We call it as arthrodial membrane. This arthrodial membrane we also call it as intersegmental membrane. Intersegmental membrane. So what will happen? Carbon dioxide dissolve in the hemolymph, enter into the intersegmental membrane. Through intersegmental membrane, what will happen? This is spiracle. Okay, let me draw it over here. One second. Let me clear this mess. ओके ऑक्सीजन की अगर बात करें तो स्पाइरिकल, स्पाइरिकल से एट्रियम, एट्रियम से ट्रेकिया, ट्रेकिया से ट्रेक्युलर सेल्स, एंड यहाँ पे सेल्स में चला जाएगा. दिस इज अबाउट द ऑक्सीजन. नाउ सेल से कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड इज गोइंग टू एंटर इनटू द हीमोलिम्फ. हीमोलिम्फ से इट इज गोइंग टू थ्रू द सेगमेंटल मेम्ब्रेन, इट इज गोइंग टू एंटर accumulate towards the accumulate near the spiracle. Now diffuse into the atrium, then it diffuse into the atrium whenever through abdominal spiracle. Now there will be the abdominal spiracles present over here. Through abdominal spiracles, what will happen? It is going to move out like a burst. Why like a burst? Because all the carbon dioxide has accumulated over here. So जैसे ही spiracle open होता है, like a burst, it is going to move out. This kind of respiration, this kind of ventilation, we call it as discontinuous ventilation. This discontinuous ventilation you will see in cockroach, grasshopper and beetles. Very important with respect to the eamcet. Now, when spiracles are closed, exchange of gases are interrupted for extended period. As soon as it open, carbon dioxide remove out in a burst. Now, this opening and closing of spiracle is depending on the carbon dioxide and oxygen partial pressure. Carbon dioxide partial pressure and hemolymph. Oxygen partial pressure and trachea. The exchange of gases depends on two factors. One is the metabolic rate, that means your cockroach is active or inactive, and other one is the temperature. Right? So that's all we have in today's class about the respiratory system.